Just wait for the YouTube to go green. All right, we're perfect here. More ways than one. Guys, thanks for joining Bad Publicity for our Kala Ghoda discussion. This episode is brought to you by Face to Face Games. Make sure you go to the links in the description. Check out Face to Face Games as they're running their big store champ convention. All Fantasy Flight games will be running at the same time. Check out facetofacegames.com. Also, we want to draw attention to our Patreon. We're picking up speed pretty nicely on the Patreon there, guys, and we really appreciate anyone who's already given. But like we said, this is just standards now. So if you have a couple extra pieces of change in your pocket, throw some copper our way at patreon.com/badpublicity. Help support what you love. Miles, Alex, what's going on today? Everyone rush out and pick up their data packs?
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, we haven't quite got
let's
us yet.
have a chat. Let's have a chat first.
You got to see if it's worth it, huh?
Maybe.
I'm
You
getting
got the spicy one. You do have some spicy ones in here, don't we? We can talk about the spices.
the spice. Yeah, some good stuff.
Is there were you guys impressed with this pack overall? Like, in summary, we don't have to deep dive the details yet, but going through the card list, is this a good kickoff to the Moonbad cycle?
I don't know, really. I'm not that excited, to be honest. Like, I'm looking through it. There's nothing that jumps out at me as something incredible. It's not like we've got a Jackson in here or even an NEH or something like that to really smash us into this new cycle. There's some interesting stuff in here, but I'm not that excited so far, honestly.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's fine. Like, there's some cool stuff in here. I know quite a lot of people are pretty excited about it, but I mean, I feel like that's not necessarily a terrible thing. I think there's some pretty crazy stuff coming up in Mumbad by the looks of things, and I think they just kind of want to ease us in, let us get a hold of the flavor and kind of the mechanics they're going to be playing around with. So I think it's probably better for them to be a little more careful. But yeah, it would have been nice to have a Clot or a Jackson in this pack at least to have a card to get super fired up about. But it's fine.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've gone through and we've picked out some of our top cards from the set, or cards that have interested us in general. But that being said, if you were going to a store championship today, do you think there is anything in this pack that stands out that people should be weary of? And that's not including all the jank that you can do with, pan chat. You know what? I really need to just go on record here and say, Moonbad cycle, I am going to butcher the names of probably more cards than I have ever butchered before. So, I really apologize, but most people are going to know what we are talking about.
Yeah.
So apart from all that jank and stuff like that with that 2-cost Shaper program, is there anything that you guys think people should really keep an eye out for?
Vikram?
Yeah, I do. Yep, Mongoose as well, and maybe also the ID. Maybe we'll get onto these in greater detail. But yeah, the 3 cards that I would expect that you would have to at least consider when deck building are Mongoose, Jesminder, and Vikram.
Yeah,
And possibly if Museum of History is influencing people to play IG, which is actually reasonably popular at the moment, at least where I am.
Yeah.
I think the only other one that probably needs to draw attention to is I think there's going to be a couple people that are going to test out High Stakes Job just to see if the return on investment is worth it. I'm not so sure that it is. It spoiler alert, it didn't make our cut. I think people are going to probably just run a dirty laundry or a bank job anyway. At least dirty laundry, you can get it off. If high stakes job is in your opening hand and they don't install a piece of ice, you're kind of pooched. At least with dirty laundry, you can run an unprotected archives with nothing in it and still get your money returned.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's our cards to watch out for. I don't, like we said, I don't think there's anything in this pack that is going to do much damage or tip something on its head right now. Maybe combined with other cards later on as the cycle starts to roll together. But other than that, let's get into our picks here.
Let's start with the ID. Let's do the ID. It's exciting. It's the ID. This is exciting. Let's do it. Let's kick it off. Let's go.
Yeah. That's the place.
Jesminder, Sareen, go behind the curtain. Awesome what do you call that? Subtitle? Awesome, the thing.
Little
flat text thing. I like that. That's very cool.
Yeah, so Jesminder, she has no link. She's a straight up typical 45-15 build. Identity is neutral in Shaper. Avoid the first tag during each run. Is this getting you excited?
It's certainly got some interesting interactions. Turns Gutenberg off real hard and Data Raven. I think it's pretty hard to talk about her without... Oh, no, it's not. Okay, so Vamp, Siphon, what else are we looking at here?
Code Siphon.
Yes.
I assume when you said Siphon, you meant the good Siphon.
I did.
But
Siphon
is worth considering too. It's Code Siphon was. I always felt like it was like maybe there, maybe almost there, and now maybe it's almost there enough to be playable. If that makes sense. Yeah. But in Jesminder, it's a nice way to use the ID, and you're playing a lot of AI breakers anyway. So yeah, she might mess around with some Code Siphons.
Yeah. I tend to agree. Code Siphon's got some applications there. Plus, you can do resourcey economy stuff while being a bit more siphon heavy, which is nice.
Yeah, and also obviously the ability kind of hates on NBN because they're the tagging faction, right? But NBN is becoming pretty ubiquitous. It's got like 3 archetypes now, maybe more, and a lot of the time that avoid the first tag is going to be pretty big. The old Data Raven QPM play doesn't work against her. I've been messing around with some stuff out of Kate to try and deal with the tagging potential of NBN, trying some hunting grounds and some Dawn computers and stuff, which is about as good as you might expect. So Jesminder sidestepping all that might just make her good enough if there's enough NBN around.
Yeah.
I totally agree, but I am very hesitant to get super excited for her ability, because I don't know how often you're going to be able to use it. If I'm going to build a runner deck, I really like an ability that's more in play, or a threat the whole game. So something like Kate, who every turn, sometimes, if it's well played, runner turn, corp turn, you're saving, you're using an ability there. Gabe, anytime you run on HQ, you can get that money back. But with something like this, this is only really almost geared towards one faction, or you have to build your deck, with those cards in it that are going to, like we talked about, the siphons and vamps, and you're going to be able to avoid one of those tags. But you could potentially come up against a corporation that doesn't tag, and you now have an ability turned off.
Yeah, so I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, though, because there's been a lot of talk about this with efficiency IDs like Kate and ETF, and any ID this is a weird ID, right? It's an ID with a weird power, as opposed to, like, comparing, what's it called? The Bioroid one, Stronger Together, comparing that to ETF. So they're both like efficiency IDs. They're trying to make your deck more efficient, but one is a much better efficiency one. So I don't think you necessarily. I mean, there's always going to be comparing this to Kate, but I think it's really nice that we have an ability that's really sideways from Kate, and it's not an efficiency ID at all. That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of, this is an odd thing to point out, but it's kind of cool that she's just a standard 45-15, which means that you could have your Shaper deck out of Kate or whoever, your generic Shaper, or maybe even CT, and then one day if you feel like there's just going to be a bunch of MBN at your local tournament, you can just swap this in, not have to worry too much about moving around it. Just, people do it with Anik all the time. Not all the time, but it does happen. Like, I'm just going to swap in Wizard this week, think it's going to be good. So she may well end up occupying that space. Without talking too much about cards coming in the future, there's Rebirth, which plays around with your IDs, so maybe she's important for that reason. So yeah, she's definitely got some applications.
Do you think that she kind of tears down NBN? Because the tagging that I've seen mostly is just I'm going to forfeit the breaking news and give you 2 tags, and that's not occurring inside that run, right? So I mean, it's still not going to protect you against the tags from a C-Source or mid-seasons.
I think this, in combination with the console, does do some damage to sync. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think that my personal opinion is I think the deck needs to revolve around avoiding the first tag in the run more than hoping that you're going to run into a Data Raven.
Yeah.
So I think you're building the deck to her strengths rather than hoping for something to be played against. But overall, right now, I'm not super pumped up on Jesminder because, like Alex said, I've really been playing a lot with Hunting Grounds, and it has really done wonders for me to avoid Data Raven tags and a lot of those encounter abilities. So to me, that mitigates more to me than avoiding that tag off a run. I mean, avoiding even if you did take a tag, not many people are running last click, right? So you always have the ability, for if you have a click left to pay 2. So essentially, this ability is saving you 2 credits.
Yeah.
Right. Do you guys have anything else to say about her ability or her in general?
I feel like because she's not super powerful or super efficient, she may just be at the point where you A, need to have the right meta full of tagging for her to be good, but also B, need to build around her. Like, it may well be that those 2 things need to come together for her to be tournament playable and not one or the other. So because we've talked about those different factors, if everything comes together, if everyone's tagging and there's a good Vamp Code Siphon deck, then that is when I would expect her to see play. I just don't think she quite gets there on one factor alone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm really going to have to see. I was surprised that she kind of was released in this pack with this console, because the other cards don't really seem to support her that definite. It doesn't jump out at me that this is a Jesminder card when I look at the rest of the cards in this deck. And Fantasy Flight in the past, or in the last cycle, really, when an ID was released, they really kind of gave a lot more support. When we talked about Geist before, when Geist came, he had a lot more support already from the first pack and in that pack. So you could really get a Geist deck up and running in play. Jesminder might have more coming for her, but right now, I just don't see her being a powerful ID with the support that we have right now. But it is going to be meta dependent. You could, if you are playing in a heavy tag meta and you take something like this, it will play.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Let's jump into one of our picks because we can continue the discussion here. So we talked about Maya. This is the Shaper console, and it's 3 influence, 3 credit cost to play. It gives you 2 memory, and it says once per turn, immediately after you access a card from R&D, you may add that card to the bottom of R&D. If you do, take a tag. Miles, you wanted to tack this on the list, so we'll give you first crack at it.
Sure. Okay, so this is obviously something that's designed to go with Jesminder straight out of the box. I quite like that. They just go, yeah, here's a really powerful effect. You can pair it with something. Like we were talking about, I think this is, as Alex said, kind of a meta call to deal with sync and like harpsichord. If people are playing sync and harp, you can have a really good time if you're playing this against them. Interesting things you can do with this. You can take News Team as a -1 point and then get rid of it and put it straight back on the bottom of R&D. That's pretty good. You can do the same thing with Quantum Predictive Model. Again, pretty good depending on what kind of environment you're in. I think since we've got this 2 memory on here, that really suggests that you're going for, they're pushing for that big rig, full-on R&D lot kind of thing. You know what I mean? So you really want to have your regular accesses, your R&D interfaces, maybe even medium, and you can choose which one to throw on the bottom. But it's almost like an imp on R&D, like a permanent imp. Because if you see a toll booth or a scorch or something, you can just go, nah, that's gone. We're not going to deal with that. And that's potentially quite powerful.
Yeah, also worth mentioning, it's a 3 cost for +2 MU, which is a pretty good rate anyway. So maybe sometimes you see it like out of other shapers who aren't so crazy about the ability when they have to take a tag as the cost to do it, but they might play it anyway because 3 for +2 MU is a pretty solid deal.
That's what jumped out at me right away. 3 for 2 is one of the best shaper consoles right there for, if you need that space.
Yeah. Memory-wise, that's the most efficient thing you can get in Shaper, because the only other 2 memory in Shaper is the macro drive, or whatever it's called, the 4 for 2. Yeah.
What was Toolbox giving? Was that
Toolbox
2?
is 2, but that costs 9 or 10 or 15 or something.
Yeah, so I mean, you go from paying 3 to something ridiculous for Toolbox, right? So,
yeah. Exactly.
I could really see this just being played for the MU in some situations.
Yeah, in some decks I certainly could.
Okay.
Have your Mopus and your full rig going. You don't have to play a bunch of chips that you don't really want to play. And then occasionally you get this extra ability as a cherry on top. Sometimes you don't care about the tag, especially if you're on Mopus economy and you're just going to bottom cards for the sake of R&D deep digs. So it's cool that you can end up with this weird, interesting ability that your deck's not all about just because it happens to be on the back of this pretty efficient console. I like that.
What about this weird play, guys? Is this now a time where we can pull out Record Reconstructor? Right, like the corporation has the corporation. I know you had to think, right? What the heck is he talking about? This is a totally janky idea, but the corporation has a lot of ways to pull cards back from their archives, right? It's archives. Once a card is discarded there, it's not as safe or it's not as out of the game as it used to be. So is it now a time where we can record reconstruct that card to the top of the deck, run it, and then bury it?
Okay, so you could run Archives interface.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just the same as an Archives interface, but it's in Shaper. So I'm glad you're like. I wouldn't want to besmirch my reputation by bringing that up, Chris. So I'm glad that it's out there for the masses. No, it's worth pointing out. It's worth pointing out. Absolutely.
Yeah,
but it's a 2-card combo.
Yeah, I know. I don't really like to
talk about combos later. You can do some interesting combos in this pack.
Oh, let's be careful. I don't want to start a 200 comment thread on Netrunner Geeks about this.
I've got a question. What do you reckon a rig looks like in this? If you're playing Jesminder with Maya, what's your rig look like? Do you think it's Opus, Proco, Atman? What do you think?
So I actually built and had one game with a Jesminder deck on Jinteki because the cards are sort of legal and you have to work around it. And just because I wanted to troll stupid sync players who win every game by slapping things behind data ravens and making you guess. So I kind of threw a deck together. So I just played it had Stim Hack and Vamp, kind of a big rig thing, 3 Mopus, 3 daily casts, and then like Torches and Size. Corrodas and Fems, and just as big rig as you can possibly get. And it functioned like every other Shaper big rig deck ever built. It was fine. I don't really know if there's that much else you can. I mean, maybe there's a low to the ground Jesminder deck that is just there to hate on NBN as hard as possible, but you just lose to everything else.
That's the problem with Shaper as a whole right now, isn't it? Because those big rig decks never seem to really work. You know, they're pretty good and they're never quite fast enough. But maybe that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah, I think that maybe because sometimes when you want to play big rig, you have to kind of make some allowances to rush or fast advance or just these decks that are operating on a level that you don't want to have to operate on. And so playing big rig, if most of the meta is these big Ice Wayland HB decks, but these faster tagging decks are an element, maybe you play a Clot, a Sacrificial Construct to protect it, you play Jesminder to avoid the tags, and then every other card in your deck is just dedicated to winning the long game, and you just aim to kind of muddle your way through these faster matchups and big rig your way through the slow ones. Maybe that will be an approach that will be viable at some point.
Maybe. Interesting.
To me, I'm not too sure if I would need to go 100% big rig for this. I think if this card is in my deck, I think I'm going to try and pull value out of it, so I'm attacking R&D pretty much most of the time. So I think maybe even a Cyber Cipher is fine.
Yeah.
Just I'm going to mark that one server and, let's go and cycle your R&D on you.
Yeah, I like that idea, actually, just play the all-in, because Shaper's always been able to do the I'm all-in on R&D kind of style deck, and this is another piece to that puzzle. It's an MU solution that has an R&D related ability, so maybe you just got your 3 RDI, 3 makers, some number of indexing, all-in R&D hate deck. That might actually be very good.
And with the memory boost that you're going to get here, you could even set up your stealth a little better to make that more efficient and just punish that R&D a lot heavier.
Or add a medium into your standard Shaper rig and just really, really go for it.
Yeah.
So if you do that, right, if I'm median, once per turn, immediately after you access a card, I guess that's not saying the top card. So if I access 5 cards, obviously I won't be able to go back, right? But so you can't pick the best of those 5 cards, but top card, card 1, okay, next, card 2, next, card 3,
Yep.
Oh, that card, bottom, take the tag, continue.
Yeah, or you there's an agenda in those bunch of cards, so you steal it. There's a couple of cards with a fairly easy trash cost, you trash those, then an operation or an ice comes up, you bottom that, then you run again, you're seeing God knows how many more cards. So it's just another element of this deep dig puzzle that
right. So essentially, in that example, what you've done is you've brought Edward Kim's ability of some sorts into Shaper.
It's kind of impy, almost.
Yeah, but in a faction that doesn't have him. So
Yeah.
What about?
And also at that point, you don't mind so much taking the tag, right? Because if you're at that point in the game, you're reaching the late game, and the tags probably don't matter. So you don't necessarily need to be Jesminder to negate the downside. You're just going to run again and probably win the game anyway. So the fact that you're getting tagged is neither here nor there.
Using that as a jump off point, you're saying you don't necessarily need to be Jesminder. The faction that I've seen play tag me the most is Anarch. Anarch has always been like, yeah, whatever, tags, let me run with it.
Yep.
What do you guys think about using this out of faction? Is this a console that we'll see out of faction play? I know 3 is sometimes steep in deck building, but it does have a powerful ability notched on it. Do you think there might be a couple people that experiment with this outside, or is that even worth it to go down that alley?
My guess would be no, because it's, like you said, it's 3MU. Like maybe pre-Most Wanted, when Anak could cover most of their bases in faction, then maybe. But right now, it's going to be like, how often is this going to be better than just having more clone chips in your deck, or even a self-modifying code? So unlikely, but again, store that in the memory bank, because there might be times when you just want to dig as hard as possible, and
someone's good.
Yeah, well, Anak likes getting extra MU, right? This is Grimoire stats, 3 cost plus 2 MU. So, and Anak is often the faction that has MU problems. So the fact that it's a good MU rate sweetens the deal a bit for Anak.
Cool. I think that pretty much covers it for the console. Looking forward to see more support for Jesminder and her play as the cycle moves along.
Yeah, let's hope so.
And also, just before we move on, I really like it. This card, how it looks. It's just nice. It just looks nice. That's all. That's the rest of what I have to say about this.
Do you know what was interesting too about the look of this card is that I think this is the first time that we've actually been able to 100% without a doubt say this console is this person's, because since they appear on the art, right?
Yeah.
Before it's always been like a weird, there's been a kind of tie, you know, like Dinosaurus, and then she's the Dinosaurus is on the Chaos Theory, but no other ties have really been put together. I think I don't know if Ian was holding logos in his thing, but
I think Noise is on Turntable, but
yeah, and Wizard is on Grimoire.
oh really? Oh
Wizard
well.
on Grimoire?
He's like the
flavor
flavor
text, isn't it? But he himself is not present. I don't know. It's super weird.
He might be, you know, he might be in the background. Anyway,
you are right about the turntable though. That was like a rough,
Yeah.
weird, abstract Noise sitting there.
The Noise's appearance seems to change in every card he's on, to be fair, so it's hard to... the art on this is super neat. It's kind of, I guess it's the most fantasy Netrunner I'll ever get, but that's cool.
Up next is Vikram 1.0. This is 6 res cost HB Century Ice. It's 2 influence, 5 strength. The runner can spend clicks to break any subroutine on Vikram. First subroutine, the runner cannot use programs for the remainder of this run. And then we have subroutine Trace 4. If successful, do 1 brain damage, and then another repeat of that subroutine. Alex, what do you have to say about this Century Biroid Tracer AP?
So it's been a bit of a slow burner for me because I saw this a long time ago. I think I might have been one of the first people to see it because I was in the draft at Worlds where we were opening the hardware pack for the first time this came out, and I thought it looked cool. I think the art's super neat, but I was very unsure about whether or not it was good. But actually, the more I considered it, the better it seemed to me. So I don't think this is breaking the game wide open. I don't think this is a new Eli 1.0 or a new wraparound or something. But the thing about... So Itchy 1.0 is obviously incredible and will always be great, but once you've got your Itchies and your Architects and your HB deck, it's hard to know. You almost certainly want to play another Sentry, but you don't necessarily know which one. So a lot of people have been playing Assassin or Itchy 2, and those are very good cards. And Itchy 2 won Worlds, but the issue that those cards sometimes have is they're not great until the runner set up a rig, right? They don't punish all that much. They've got Assassin's got the net damage and Itchy's got the brain damage, but early game you're not super excited. I don't know, I'm sure you've all had those games where you draw, you're the first 2 pieces of ice you draw are Itchy and then Itchy again, and you have to kind of bluff them on centrals and stuff. I like that Vikram does an Itchy impression by making it hard for the runner to get in when paired with End the Run Ice, but I also like that it is an early punishing face check because of the brain damage. So this can just sit there on R&D, and although the runner can get through, it's either going to be a lot of credits or a lot of clicks. So I like that this, basically I think this card is good because when you evaluate a card, you should look at its worst case scenario as well as its best case scenario. And this card has a better worst case scenario than a lot of other Sentries, if that makes sense.
I think that 100% makes sense. I think it's, I think this is a good card. I'm excited for this card, but I'm not over the moon about this card. You know, some of these Biroid Ice you really have to look at and think, those subroutines are always going to be deadly, but the ability to click through them always takes them down just a little notch. But that being said, you know, you talked about Itchy 1.0. That is a strength 4 with 3 subroutines on it. This card here is a strength 5, so it's very nice to have that variety in strength already.
Yeah, you start.
Oh. I don't know if you just froze up a bit.
Oh, sorry.
So what was that?
A variety of strengths is obviously super good because it stops Optman 4 from just breaking everything that you res, and also the clickability on Biroids is mitigated the more of them you play, because obviously an Eli can be clicked through, but 2 Elis and a Vikram, they're going to need to find a break for at least 2 of those pieces of ice.
Right.
So Vikram is... you're unlikely to throw him into your next ice decks or something when there's not a bunch of other Biroids to tax that clickability. But when you're already playing your Elis and your Itchy 1s, because this certainly doesn't replace Itchy 1, the clickability on Vikram is just that bit better.
I think it's balanced out nice too. I mean, 6 is sometimes a steep res cost. You're not going to res this turn 1, but you're also not putting this out turn one. You want this mid-game almost, because this should be the first piece of ice that the runner runs into. If that first subroutine fires, you have to give them the choice. Are they spending the click, or are they able to break this somehow? You don't want this to be the last piece of ice where the runner can't use programs for the remainder of this run, because that's already one subroutine that they're going to be like, well, fire that one off.
But I do. Part of the reason that I think it had as good worst case scenario is because this is still better at a base in an emergency than an itchy 2 or an itchy 1. You can still, you've got to be able to winning those games where you draw your ice in the right order is not so difficult, right? But you want to be able to win those games where you draw your ice in the wrong order, and Vikram can kind of do an impression. And there are times when the first subroutine does matter when it's the innermost piece of ice. So if you use this to protect an Adonis or an Eve campaign, they can't imp it afterwards because they can't use imp. So it has some. That might be actually pretty much the only application, although there might be a couple of other bits and pieces, but they can't SMC afterwards if they're vamping, for example. So
medium.
Yeah, that's a good point for those.
He won't get more counters. He won't get more counters, so yeah.
But those last two subroutines are nice and taxing. Trace 4 is quite a big number, so I like this card because it's not as bad when it's bad as it could have been, which is a funny thing to say about a card, but a card's worst case scenario is so important when you're assessing its tournament viability. That's the reason that we see Diesels and Sure Gambles in decks time and time again, because they're never that bad. And what may potentially one of Vikram's greatest strengths is that it's never that bad. Which is a funny thing to say, but it's important.
It's true. That's how it works at Sentries, though. That is what Sentries are like a lot of the time.
Yeah. The couple of points that I like about this card is that every time a card says brain damage on it, inflict brain damage, it always perks me up a bit. It's always, we don't really have that big of a selection of brain damage cards in the game. This is one that I do feel is easier to use than some of the other ones. I think it does fill a void. Like you said, a lot of people have been moving over to Assassin just for some variety and stuff, and I think this is being compared to as the swap out for that. And also, I like to see more Biroid ice. I like to see that variety in there. Although I would have liked to see cheaper Biroid ice, sometime more of a variety of that. But maybe at this point it's just not HB's thing to have cheap Biroids. What do you guys think about this as a Biroid and from a brain damage perspective?
Yeah, well, just what you were saying about the cheap ones, I almost feel like they can't do cheap Biroids that much, because the whole thing about Biroids is that they're really powerful because of the click thing. They're powerful for their cost, so I wonder if cheap Biroids are too dangerous, as we've seen with LA. Anyway, that's just a slight thing. I really like this. It's really, really taxing all the time. If you have an Atman 5, it's okay, but apart from that, it's going to be pretty hard to deal with, I think. And you kind of do have to deal with it, because the cannot use program is sometimes irrelevant, but as Alex said, the 2 Trace 4s, that's something you want to do something about almost every time. So I think this is worth... I think this is worth trying out, for sure. Absolutely.
I think it's the kind of card that is almost certainly a 2 of. Like, almost all the time it's going to play. Maybe you see it as a 1 of, but it's not a 3 of card. I really like how versatile it is. You can put it on the outside of your scoring remote, and they do have to break the first subroutine. Maybe they can take some brain damage, but unless you build a terrible scoring remote, they cannot use all programs. So they can't crack SMCs, they can't avoid your other potentially damaging sentries, and they just can't get in. And also they can't data sucker stuff. So if there's an end the run ice beyond this with a parasite on it, they can't finish it off with a data sucker. And because there's another card, isn't there, a whaling card, where you pick one program that can't be used, and it's always super awkward because the runner can play around it. This is just a stop sign. But yeah, also the brain damage means you can put it anywhere and have it pull its weight. And it costs 6, which is still expensive, but it's not Assassin or Itchy 2 costs.
Yeah, it's nicer than Itchy 2. Sure.
Yeah, and you might see players in some decks that care more about the brain damage too. You might put it in your Cybernetics Division deck as mostly there for the brain damage, but also helps you out with the programs thing. So sometimes you'll see it flipped, where it's played more for the brain damage than for the can't use programs. For the most part, I think more often you're really excited about that can't use programs, and then pretty happy that it punishes them on top of that.
Yeah.
Just some other side questions that I think about. I think that was an amazing point, that the first subroutine is going to have to be broken. When you think about all that recursion, SMC is a huge card. Shaper is such a huge threat with that. So if they're not breaking that first one, all those other cards that you think of that are programs that are not icebreakers, can still not be used.
You can turn off Net Shield.
Boom. What do you guys think of it being a Biroid? Is this the piece that Stronger Together needs, or is it still?
We've been down this road before. I don't know, man.
Brain Taping Warehouse is a fairly playable card, and maybe there's a Brain Taping Warehouse deck, and maybe this goes in it. There's another grid coming up that reses stuff at weird times that might be good with Brain Taping Warehouse, which is not worth talking about now because it's not in this pack. But maybe it's good there. So maybe it's good. Maybe the fact that it's a borrowed is relevant for the sake of Brain Taping Warehouse. I'm also not a big Stronger Together fan, but maybe, yeah, sure.
I don't. Stronger Together it's like the cult following of Netrunner.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
There's the Stronger Together people out there that are faithful to Stronger Together, right? But they're few and far between.
Yeah, sadly.
What about it being? Sorry,
same as the brain damage deck. There's always people that want to do Stronger Together, and always people that want to do a brain damage deck. It's been time immemorial.
I think the brain damage deck is more viable than the Stronger Together deck, for what it's worth.
Sure. I think the main thing about this being a Biroid is you can have a 6-5 ratio, which is filthy. 6 cost, 5 strength. That's pretty gross.
Yep.
Is this going to be a big enough threat, being an AP, that people will have to put Deus Ex back in?
I wouldn't say so, no.
Nah.
Because David does break it, so if they need an emergency breaker, they can play David, which is much more playable.
Yeah.
People have always said that brain damage, when we talk to the designers of the game, brain damage, because of how damaging it is, it's not going to be easy to land. So that's why I said it's always nice to see different ways to inflict brain damage. Looking at this, a trace of 4. If the runner has no no way to deal with this, and they don't want to click through, is trace of 4 good enough? Do you guys think if you were building this card, is that fair to have a trace of 4? Is that too hard for them to get through?
I think that 4 is the perfect number for it to count as taxing without being all that taxing, if that makes sense. 3 is when traces start to look a little embarrassing. 5 is very, very good. I guess NBN gets good trace numbers now, and everyone else is still playing catch up on that. But 4 is fine. Obviously, if Nexus K gets good, then it's not a good number. But 3 credits for 1-link runners and 4 credits for 0-link runners is a very good rate.
Do you guys think it's fair to have the trace there, or would you rather have seen it without, just a straight subroutine?
Nah,
I actually think just a straight subroutine would not have been that bad, but maybe I think I probably tend towards wanting cards to be way more powerful, so maybe that's wrong. I think they have been a bit too careful with inflicting brain damage in the past. I think at some point the designers or developers overrated how bad brain damage was and made it so you had to jump through a million hoops to get it. Now they're making it a little bit easier, which I support.
Yeah, because I think that having the trace of 4 on there makes it, the runner can still avoid it if necessary. I'm kind of a love-hate relationship with that trace of 4. I would have loved to see it just brain damage, but
one
playing
trace
along,
one definite brain damage would have been fine, but it would have made the card a bit weird and complicated.
Playing along the lines of brain damage is hard to land. At least it gives them that, you can break it. You've got 3 ways, right? You can pay the trace, you can click it, you can use a breaker to eliminate the sub. So it is kind of hard to stick that one, but I'm glad that it's a 4. Most times I've seen link 2 on a runner. You get your starting link somewhere along the lines. They might have something that boosts the link, even if they don't. If it's in there, just by accident, it's just on this chip. I didn't really care about the link, but it's it's there. So 2 would have been a wash. And then 3 would have been oh, I'm paying 1 extra credit. I'm glad it's at least 4. So maybe if they have 2 link, it's costing them 4 extra credits. So it is taxing a little bit there, but it's not breaking the bank wise.
Yeah, it's, well, obviously one of the thing I've talked about, the reason I like this card on the Corp side is it's very versatile. Its downfall is kind of on the flip side, it's quite versatile for the runner to deal with it. So you get a bunch of options to use it, and the runner gets a bunch of options to deal with it. But at least that makes the game interesting.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Moving into our next card here. This is Advanced Concept Hopper. This is the HB agenda. It's a 4 for 2. The first time the runner initiates a run each turn, you may draw 1 card or gain 1 credit. So I'll start off here. I was really drawn to this card. So this was my pick for the edition of the show. I really like the fact that this is, I think this is a strong 4-2 here, giving that choice of draw or credit. If you're not running HB engineering the future, I think this is an agenda that you're going to be looking to, because sometimes HB running that we just saw with Vikram, that more expensive ice, it's kind of hard to build up a credit pool consistently with HB. And I know you can run your green levels and your blue level, and people are running Adonis and Eve and stuff like that, but having the runner, the first time the runner initiates a run, which pretty much they're going to do a turn, so you're gaining that engineering the future credit in a different style of deck. If you do not need the credit, draw is always super nice in a card game.
Yep.
I think this is a powerful agenda, and I think this could open up different builds other than engineering the future.
Okay. I think it's still going to see more play in engineering the future than anything else, just because it just is.
I didn't want to say it, but I agree. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I see what you mean about getting that economic benefit, but you can still get it in an ETF. I think this is pretty good. It's just come out right after the most wanted list has dropped, and we've had to see probably NAPDs cut. And I think this is probably better for food coats than efficiency committee is.
Yeah.
Because and if you score this early, this is going to get you like a lot. If you can score this early on, you get quite a lot of value. And it's not even just the credit. If you can, drawing cards can occasionally be the right choice as well, because you might want to be digging for your agenda, or maybe you're even, are trying to put extra cards in the HQ to hide the one agenda there because they're running HQ. I think this is quite a powerful agenda.
Yeah, so potentially 4 cards in hand, right, if you finish with full 5 hand size.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you got 5 cards in hand, one's an agenda, they run HQ, you just go, okay, I'll draw an extra card to just give myself a bit of insurance.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I have one of these in real life because I drafted one at Worlds. And so I've had it sitting around forever, and I would always just glance at it. It'd be lying on the desk. I'd be like, this isn't good enough. And then Most Wanted dropped, and I was like, okay, now I need to start thinking about this. Most Wanted list is the best thing that ever happened to Advanced Concept Hopper. Because like Miles said, unless you're doing stupid, unfair things with FCon, this is going to do more work than FCon. So I wouldn't be expecting this to be a 3-of, but I reckon we're going to see quite a lot of decks playing this as a 1-of or maybe a 2-of.
Yeah. And that's where I think it's gonna shine. Unfortunately, everything that comes out along the is always probably going to be better in engineering the future. But I do think that this could be the lead-in to other playable HB identities. We've all seen in the past, it's proven that it's not that hard to score 4 for 2s anymore. People are doing it. I know when there wasn't those choices, people were like, well, I'm just going to run a 3 for 2 anyway. Because the abilities on those 3 for 2s were still really good.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing the agendas get a lot more balanced. 3 for 1s have, that quick effect, they're not as potentially deadly as, a 5 advancement card. 4 for 2s are getting that punch that they really needed in this card in general. This card, as a 1 or 2 of in your deck, if scored early, it has just changed the whole tempo of the game.
Yeah. I really like that it's, because there's quite a lot of economic agendas, but I like it's an economic agenda that does something else when you're loaded. When you're loaded, you just want to see more cards to play more cards. So I like that you can switch modes, because sometimes you just get super rich and money's no object. I like that then, instead of just, because there's another card coming, Corporate Sales Team, that's an agenda that makes you money. But this card switches roles when you're loaded, and I think that's really cool. Also, there might be some decks that are more concerned about the draw, some combo-y decks that want to get through their deck as fast as possible, and they're going to be really excited about the draw ability on this, and then we'll sometimes use it for credits. Having 2 modes is so good in card games, if anyone didn't know that.
Yes. Also, if you got 2 of these scored as well, that's really good.
Really punishing.
Really powerful. Because if that speeds you up towards your food, your GFI, that's pretty strong.
And it punishes run economy, so as if criminals needed the hurt, but like it makes a security testing worse than a proco, because when you do it, it's like paywall implementation in that way.
Yeah, and it's really nice that it's so where I find this very deadly. It says the first time the runner initiates, I'm going to run here before anything happens. Yep. Oh, that's So now you are mathing out, right? I'm looking at the corporation's credit pool, and I'm saying to myself, man, if I give him 1 extra credit, how does that change the flow of this run? Like, how many times have you been sitting there as a corporation with a couple face down ice, and you're like, oh my God, I'm 1 credit short from rezzing this piece right now. There's the credit. With 2 of these scored, like Miles said, I'm giving you 2 credits just to start this run. I'm like, how many more options does that open up? To me, it's so weird. Alex, I think you touched on it too. The draw 1 card or gain 1 credit is, I think that's the tipping point. The choice of this agenda. Obviously, we've all had those games where you're like, oh man, I don't need credits. I'll spend double the credits for anything to res or do. I don't care, because what am I going to do with all these? After a certain point, you're just saying, any credit gain is just, it's not efficient, right? Like it has no bearing to this game whatsoever. But, draw 1 card. Now that also changes the game.
And because you're super rich, that card draw is even more beneficial, because it's not like, because every card in your deck is good. So you're like, oh, just give me another ice, because I'm going to pay for it, res it, or give me an agenda because I've got the credit lead, I'm going to score it. When you're rich, cards are more valuable. So the mode switch is always coming at a good time.
Yeah, I agree. There's a little bit of a discussion about this as well, which is what are you cutting to put this in? And I think, and if you build your deck around, I don't think it's to build a deck around. I think this is just a nice 4-2 that when you score it is better than an efficiency committee. And I think, or for if you're putting it into food codes specifically, and I think you're kind of making a decision here about whether you want ICE or NAPD, and that decides if you put this in your deck, basically, right? Because I think you have to put 3 LI in HP all the time. I think, especially in a very
anarchic architect too. Maybe.
Exactly. And I think this lets you play 3 LI 3 architect, which makes it really hard to play an NPD. But now you can kind of put this in and be pretty happy with it, I think.
Yep.
Oh, for sure. I would be ecstatic. The NAPD replacement cut is where my mind jumped to right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to think of this as letting you put in an extra architect, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah. Just imagine architect stapled to its face, and it all becomes a lot more appealing.
Right.
I go to, I'm going to test this as a one-off in food coats. In food coats, I was running 3 NAPD before. I'm going to move to 3 Vitruvius and put one of these in.
Same.
That's my place for this card right now.
And you know what though, I'm almost willing to put my money on it that ratio might swap.
Maybe, yeah.
I think maybe you'll be running one Vitruvius with 2 advanced hoppers.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. Vitruvius doesn't give you money as directly as Hopper does. So,
So there we have that. I think this is an exciting agenda to get to, because it gives me hope for the other agendas in the cycle. I always like to look at how they've balanced the cost, the score, and what the ability is on agendas coming. Anything else that you guys want to talk about Advanced Hopper before we click to the last one?
I think we covered this card pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very. I think it's actually very, very interesting. There's a lot of different permutations to this card. But I feel like we touched on all of them. There's more to it than there might first appear, I think.
The last one that we're going to talk about too was picked. We just tacked this one on at the end just for an interesting discussion about the building requirements for this card. This is Museum of History. This is 1 2 res up, and it's a 3 trash cost. It's an asset, alliance, and Richie. This card costs 0 influence if you have 50 or more cards in your deck. When your turn begins, you may shuffle 1 card from archives into R&D. Now, I think that's an ability that any corp would love, because
So good.
moving 1 card from archives back in. This, I don't know if it's potentially what Damon has hinted off, or if this is the new, once Jackson kind of rotates out, this is the sneak the way that you can put your agendas back in. You do have to give your deck a little shuffle, so sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad.
Yeah.
But the interesting part about this is that it's 2 influence, but it says that it's 0 if you have 50 or more cards in your deck. The discussion that I wanted to bring up is not if this is a good card or not, because obviously it's a really powerful card. I think that the trash to the res is nice for the ability. You don't want a huge ability like this and a high trash cost.
Yeah.
But the interesting part is if you have 50 or more cards in your deck, it's 0. Is this the time that we're going to start seeing that deck sizes that are going to push past 49? Because obviously we know that once you increase your deck size, now your agenda count's going up. Is the payoff hand in hand here, guys? What do you think about cards like this?
So when you increase your minimum deck size, your density isn't necessarily increasing. I believe that 54, if built correctly, is actually less agenda dense than 49. I'm not a mathematician, but I believe that there was already that strength there. The big reason that you don't do it is because it just reduces consistency. You're drawing Hedge Fund less frequently, you're drawing Architect less frequently, you're drawing Caprice or Jackson less frequently. And some of the cards in your deck are just better than others. No matter, it's going to be very hard to design a card game where some cards aren't clearly better than others in your deck. But people were already experimented with more than 49 cards out of IG Industrial Genomics, because that wants to play this slow, long game anyway. And this goes straight into that, I think. I think this makes IG a lot more viable, which is completely miserable, but there we are. It's a way of play that a lot of people enjoy.
There's actually a couple of really strong IG decks in my meta at the moment, performing really well, and I'm vaguely terrified to see this going in, actually, because they're hard to deal with. Maybe 3. There's 3 guys playing this really prominently at the moment. I think, I mean, consider that this effect is normally stapled onto a 5/3 agenda when we've seen it before.
A very good 5/3 agenda that is better than probably the majority of 5/3s. When you play one 5/3, it's often Hades Shard because the ability is so good. And this is often better because it shuffles in, it doesn't go on the bottom. So you can shuffle in your best card and actually draw it instead of leaving it on the bottom where you can't get at it.
Yeah, and because the only ID that actually does play more than 50 with any kind of regularity is IG, and the only one that I would argue actually gets any benefit out of it. This is not going to have a trash cost of 3. It's going to have a trash cost of like 15.
Yeah.
And I think, and these guys do want the game to just keep rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling forever until you just can't do anything about it. So, I think this might be a sleeper, actually. In a deck. I don't expect this to go into like everything. You won't see this in NBN or HB or anywhere except IG. But
you don't think anyone's paying the influence cost straight out?
I don't think you're ever playing the influence costs. I do think there might be some other non-IG more than 50 card decks. I know depending on the meta is a thing you say when you don't have any other backup for your but I do think that like noise wasn't hurt that much by Most Wanted, and noise is still perfectly playable. Maybe there will be some deck that goes, okay, I'm happy with all my other matchups. I just don't like my noise matchup, so I'm going to play more cards so he can't deck me as easily, and then I'm going to put this in and win the long game. So maybe sometimes do that as a bit of an anti-noise thing.
I reckon you can. I don't know if that's a good solution.
Yeah, I might be shooting for stars.
For your hypothetical player, I would tell them to just like build their deck better or just play better.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know what I mean?
But I think I think it's possible.
Sorry.
You know what? I'm going to use that caveat from now on, depending on the meta. Everything I say at the end, I'm just going to say .m. That's going to be my new thing. DOTM, man.
When someone likes a card but they can't actually justify it being good, they say, "Oh no, in the right meta, this card's good."
It's so true.
In the right meta, I can play two credits.
But you know, Corey and I have been working on different IG builds, and what's interesting about the IG builds that are coming around now, they're running very slim ice. You know, so before this pack came out, we had experimented with 54 card IG builds, but when you want to see cards in those decks, it's very difficult to see those cards. I know maybe it's just the roll of the dice that we've had from testing, but you know, Alex, you've hinted on it. The more cards you put in your deck, the harder it is to see the ones that you need. So if you're looking for those Ronin kills out of IG, or you know, you're looking for those one or two chairman heroes that you've put in to set up that combo, or you know, you're looking for that one piece of ice that you just want to put over R&D, you know, you've really hindered yourself to see that. That being said, I do think we are going to see a lot more people experiment with 50 card decks or more because of the power of this card, and IG is obviously the place that they're putting museum history the most.
Yeah.
So there you have it, guys. 50 card decks could be a thing. I'm not sure. Is there other ones coming out that are dealing with deck size?
Not as far as I know.
Yeah, most of them are. Sorry, excuse me. Most of them are if you're running, like what was that other chip? You know, the 6 limits, like.
Yeah. So the runner side is consumer grade, which is more than you play more than 3, you can play up to 6, and the corp side is the alliance mechanic, which is this doesn't have an influence cost if you fulfill some stipulation. A lot of them are just the faction affiliated alliance cards care about their own faction. So there's a Jinteki alliance card in this pack that doesn't cost influence if you have other Jinteki cards. And then there's some neutral ones that play around in all kinds of weird space. There's one card that doesn't cost influence if you have 3 pad campaigns. There's one that doesn't cost influence. There's the one in this pack that cares about the number of ice you have. So yeah, they play around with deck building restrictions essentially.
Are you guys excited for a mechanic like that? Does it tickle you the right way, or do you think it's?
But I actually really like it from a gameplay perspective. I think it's really fun that they can push us to do interesting things in deck building. I don't so much like the administration, busy work side of it, where deck checking becomes a bit more difficult now. That side is a bit.
I'd be surprised if that was too much of an issue, honestly. I agree. I think it's really cool.
No, it's not huge.
It's maybe at Nationals or something, or Worlds, or where it's going to actually matter. I think that, yeah, that's potentially an issue. But I think it's a cool idea. I really do. I think it's great.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a good thing for them.
Yeah. Can we just take a moment to acknowledge how fantastic Panchatantra is? Like, not even fantastic, but just it's so cool that you can. I just think that, man. It's so
what,
great.
like, because how now it got, you know, re-Twitter errated, or.
And I've heard it's going to get errated again. So basically, this card just does whatever you want it to do all the time.
Whatever you want.
Just lie, and it's fine.
It's still not good, but it's not. I don't think it's good, but it's so cool. Yeah, love it.
It's
your wraparounds are fracta.
Yeah, exactly. Enforcer being a console, I don't know if that works at the moment. I know it did work for a bit, but God damn, my Law degree actually prepared me for this. Like, the litigation on this subject keeps changing, but I think Enforcer can't trash itself right now, but in next week, who knows? Twitter might rule differently.
I just love it.
I think it's...
Love
I have a lot of feelings. It's very funny, though.
Yeah.
Shout out to Spags for the Netrunner Geeks thread.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as long as it doesn't have an end to run, you're safe.
Yeah.
That brings us probably to the end. Those are the cards that we picked as kind of the standout cards for this pack. Not including all that jank fun stuff your people are going to pull out with that pan card, but
I think Mongoose is the card that we didn't touch on that's actually extremely good, and extremely good in the sense that it's very, very solid and will see play. We just had other cards we wanted to talk about, but Dave Hoyland told me that Mongoose was good, so I'm pretty sure Mongoose is good, so yeah, put it in your decks.
That's it. It's got the DH stamp of approval right there.
When Mongoose was spoiled, I was in the best place you can possibly be, which is sitting across the table from Dave Hoyland, which is, I highly recommend when a criminal card is spoiled, being in the presence of Hoyland, because we were like, is this good, Dave? And he was like, yeah, it's good. And we moved on. That was fine. Like, it's good.
Nobody argued. Nobody said a peep. People just...
Yes, Dave.
People just wrote it down in the criminal scribe Bible, and...
It was the day of Worlds final, the Worlds cut that we first saw this, and we were all hanging out with Dave after the cut, and he was like, "Yeah, if this was legal today, I'd put it in my Leela deck for Worlds." And we're like, "Okay, cool, yeah." So that's all you need to know about Mongoose. It's good.
All right, you heard it here first, folks.
Any other thoughts, guys? Closing thoughts here. Did you guys have a worse card in the deck, or
Street Magic is the most overrated card. Street Magic. That's my pick for most overrated.
It doesn't do anything. It
doesn't do anything.
If it was on the Corp side, it would be kind of cool. Like, I'd quite like to see a Corp asset with that effect. But on the runner side, it's Dedication Ceremony. I think might literally not do anything. This is kind of a rulings thing, so maybe Twitter will make it do something. But right now,
this is the one that I wanted to talk about before, the 4-card combo.
Oh,
okay.
Boy. Okay.
Do you want to know what it's the best? Okay. Card 1, Dedication Ceremony. Card 2, Casting Call. Card 3, Government Takeover. Card 4, another Dedication Ceremony.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, how good's that? That'd be the best thing in the universe.
I might build that just until I do it once on Jinteki and then never play it again.
I want to do it one time.
I like that it's hosted by Film Critic. That's just the cherry on the cake for me.
Really?
I don't know if this advances Ronin, to be honest. I think it does, but God knows.
Yeah, you can res Ronin.
Cool, yay. We did it.
We did it.
I don't know what a face-up card is. I don't know the rules to this game. But yeah, Dedication Ceremony does basically nothing, so that's good, isn't it? Well done.
Yeah, because
Saving Wayland.
I think the only face-up cards are the public agendas.
No, it's anything with res.
You can a res card is actually face-up.
Oh, really? Because I didn't know if those were two different states. Is it resed or is it face-up?
No, that res cards are face. All res cards are face-up, but not all face-up cards are res.
Yep.
Boom. What?
Yeah, we did it, Tyrant.
What?
Damn.
No, Dedication Ceremony. I almost wanted to pick it just for the discussion that it would bring about. Maybe somebody in the chat, as we struggle to tell you how weird Dedication Ceremony is, someone would put this little one chat line combo that no one's thought of, and we'd be like, holy bleep bleep bleep.
No, it's Casting Call, man. That's where it's
Accelerated Diagnostics Casting Call. In fact, yeah, you can. I'm pretty sure you can score a government takeover in one turn if you Accelerated Diagnostics.
No, this says you can't score it on the same turn. They're like,
what says you can't? Oh right, yeah.
So you're gonna leave.
That might make it good. Actually, that would make it.
Because you could install an Oak down and you could score out Hollywood. Although on the public agendas, this doesn't trigger their advancement abilities, does it?
No, which is just amazing.
Why? Why is Wayland the faction of combos that do not work? It's E3 deposit all over again. God damn it.
It's almost like the the old slapstick comedy where, you know, place 3 agenda tokens on a face-up card is like someone just about to take a bite of a sandwich, and then you cannot score that card until your next turn begins. It's like someone just slapping it right out of their face, right? Like, you're like,
So,
I'm
this
just
card
about to
is
get
so
my
much-
just desserts, and then pop, they take it away from
Yeah,
me.
that's
It's
Whaling
also-
cards. The first sentence is great. The rest is less good.
Yeah.
Also, it's the only Wayland card in the pack. Like, they didn't put a piece of mildly playable ice to go with it. So, like, yeah, like Tim, the Wayland player, runs downstairs on Christmas morning to open his new data pack, and he just gets this. This is it. You did it.
Right.
Like,
And it's
I hope
and
you're a
it's,
Shaper player, because this pack has nothing for you.
it's like that last card in the pack too, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, Anarch 3 of, Criminal 2, Shaper 4. Okay, there's a neutral. Then 2, 2, 2, 1. What the F?
Yeah. Yeah, why is it the last card in the pack after the
You
new?
know what you can blame it
Oh, no,
on?
it's not.
You
It's
can
just
blame it
all
on the 550 BMI. If it didn't need 6 cards in this pack, there would be probably space for another Wayland set.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, BMI host Wayland, and that's all it'll ever do. Correct. Ugh.
And look amazing.
Yeah, yeah, the art is cool. Yeah, this pack is... I think there's a lot of craziness coming in the Mumbad cycle. Like, we've seen a lot of weird stuff. There's a lot of very strange Shaper Icebreakers. They're playing around with a lot of interesting design space, and I think they just wanted to ease us in with some cards that didn't quite jump off the deep end. The Alliance cards are pretty easy to grasp. The runner has got some obvious synergies within the pack. They put in Panchatantra to confuse the hell out of us, but I think they're easing us in, and I think it's the right way to do it.
And we have one generically powerful card, an advanced concept of it that we can look at and feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You don't
I
think
look
we're
forward
ready
to seeing
for it
what
yet, Alex?
Much better deck builders than me can come up with, honestly.
Sorry, what did you say?
I know I'm not going to be the guy to do it, but someone's going to do it, and it's going to be awesome. So,
I was saying at this point of the game, you think we still need to be eased in to a data cycle here?
I know, but I like that they've... I feel like there's an art to creating a data cycle, and you want to start off establishing things and then really getting into.
It's painting this beautiful landscape, and it's all unfolding.
I think the way they do cycles now is so much better because obviously the first two didn't really have any theme to them. They were just kind of packs of cards. I think that I like that they theme them now and they take us through the world. And I think they're really getting it down with cycles. But yeah, I think the balance of jank to confusing good cards to generically good cards in this pack is pretty well done.
Guys, thanks again for joining us. Alex, Miles, any final closing thoughts? Any goodbyes? Any shout outs to your moms or things that you need to do?
I would be surprised if my mum was watching this.
Me too.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. Should be fun. I mean, I don't see anything that I want that I'm excited about right now, but there might be later because I'm just being a jerk and playing decks that other people make right now because I'm not very good at building decks. So,
and that's fine.
yeah. But I'm sure someone's going to do something really cool with this cards in this cycle, and it's going to be great, and we're going to have a very exciting time. Oh, and also I'm going to forget the names of all the cards because they're confusing. Like you said, Chris, I'm going to confuse so many cards. I'm going to forget the names of this cycle.
You're going to get under that non-pronunciation caveat from the beginning, eh?
You'll win a trivia or a pop quiz in 5 years' time because of some pieces of info. So you should be thankful. You're becoming. This is
because of that thread on Reddit about the law.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff in this. I want to give a quick shout out to all the potential industrial genomics players of the world. Play it if you think it's good, but don't play it if you think it's fun, because it's not fun, and you're just going to ruin everyone's day. So if it's not good, don't play it, please.
Fine.
I've only got so much time to spend on Jinteki.net. I'd rather have 3 games against MBN than 1 game against IG. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you know your day's going bad. Like, here's the tip. IG is out there right now. If you sit across the table from someone at a store championship this weekend and they ask you what you want to play first, you better say your runner.
Yeah.
Because guaranteed, if you say, oh, I don't care, they're going to be like, okay, because I have this Jinteki IG deck that I'll start playing first. It's going to take you 45 minutes to get through, and then you're going to have to try and win a turn.
Opponent's IDs when you're deciding what to play. That is technology to sidestep the IG deck. You've got that right out the bat. But if IG is good, I won't resent these people. They're just trying to win. That's fine. But if it's bad and miserable, that's like the sweet spot of terrible. That's when I get upset.
Oh, man. Nice.
Guys, thanks very much for tuning into our Kala Ghoda little breakdown here. We wanted to do kind of a pack review in a different way and just give a couple cards the shine that we thought they deserved.
I think it's a much better way of doing it.
Like we said off the top, if you haven't checked out our Patreon, if you like what we're doing, we encourage you to throw some change our way. Bad Publicity is always going to be free. We're not going to lock it down, but we do appreciate anything you guys can offer.
Yep.
Thanks again for tuning in and watching. Always appreciated. Bye for now.
Cheers, guys.
There you go.